Welcome. It's great to be here. My name is Monica Huntsberry. I'm an advisor and host for Revel 11, and I'm here with my dear friend and author, Kirsten Marion. Hi, Kirsten. It's
Hi,
good to
Monica.
it's good to see you. For those of you who don't know Kirsten, I'm going to read you her bio. Kirsten pursued her writing passion with a degree in English literature. Life took one of its funny turns at that point, and she ended up in finance and accounting for the duration of her career. When retirement finally released her from the world of business, she was free to pursue her fierce love of writing and has now reinvented herself as an author. She has 3 middle grade novels published. The Chic Crone is her first novel for adults. Welcome.
Thank
First
you.
of all, congratulations on the launch. How does it feel?
Well, it's not as birthing baby, but it's close. Yeah, it's been exciting. It's been busy, and it's the result of a lot of work. And I'm really proud of the cover. Vera Dramovsky out of Montreal did a super job. So, yeah, it's going well. Thanks for asking.
That's great. And if I can ask you maybe, Kirsten, to just double check your internet connection. You froze for a moment, but I think we have you back. Can you show us the book cover again? There you go. Oh, I love that. And was that a joint collaboration?
Um, yeah, I gave her a designer brief and told her the style I wanted. And she sent back a really detailed proposal, and she built up the layers using different, it was really interesting. She's a very talented illustrator.
Sometimes we think about the writing that goes into a book and we forget about the very many parts and how important the illustrators are. So thank you for showcasing her as well.
Well, yeah, because covers make or break a book, as I've discovered in the past. So,
Yeah, great.
yeah.
All right, well, we have a lot to cover today. Let's start with one of the topics of reinvention. And I would love to hear from you firsthand about your big transition from corporate to creative, how that kind of came about and what you might highlight or share in terms of your learnings during your own personal transformation process.
Mm, I've always wanted to be a writer since I was 8 years old. I started making my own little books. Um, but then, as you said in my bio, life took over, and I did have to spend a number of years doing other things. And just writing is kind of a background activity. Um, when you have a family, when you have a big job, when you have other responsibilities, it is hard to squeeze in the writing. And one of the things I firmly believe in life is sequencing.
Tell me more about sequencing.
That you can do it all, but you can't do it all at once.
So true.
Yeah. So there are different stages in your life when it's appropriate to focus on different things because they might not be available. Like having children for women is available in a certain stage of life, not every stage of life. So it became a point of, okay, this is when I do this. And when I don't have to do this anymore, I can do that. Um, so for me, transitioning wasn't particularly difficult afterwards because I just had the time and the energy and the bandwidth to do it. For a lot of people, making a big transition is difficult though, because I'd always thought of myself as a writer, so I had a self-image of myself as a writer. So for me to believe that I could be a published author wasn't insurmountable. Whereas for a lot of people, if they've never written, they want to be a published author, they're starting from here, they have to get to here, and their brain is going, don't be ridiculous. You can't do that. So they have to find another way to make that leap between here and there.
And I think, what you're highlighting is the importance of a belief system, right? And how we view ourselves and where we shelve our dreams. Because whether it's being a writer or, climbing Mount Everest or whatever it might be, right? We all have dreams, and many of us, especially during early stages of adulthood, whether it's we're raising a family, building a career, or both, we kind of have to shelve those. But it sounds like what you're saying is you continued to nurture that belief system and the work about writing until you had the time and capacity and bandwidth.
Mhm.
And that allowed a belief system that helped you perhaps catapult a little bit faster into your new career.
I think so. I wrote some really terrible things first. So it's good to have that practice time.
Mm-hmm.
But a belief system is really important, and what you believe about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was talking about crossing that big gap. Sometimes the easiest way to get from I don't write to I'm a published author is to sneak up on it and show your brain evidence that you can do these things. So you start with writing a page. So you tell your brain, okay, I've written a page. I'm a person who can write a page. Wash, rinse, repeat. 350 pages later, you got yourself a book.
Right.
Then you can say, I am a person who writes books. And then you have to learn how to do the rest of the steps to get the book published. And that's a whole different cauldron of spells. But by that time, you're already a writer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's the baby steps along the way. It's never in one big go. It's a process and a journey. We are getting some comments, so I want to make sure. It sounds like we have a good one here from Pooja. Do you evaluate people's writing and provide feedback? Maybe that's a separate one. We'll address at the end, is her question about how as a writer you can get feedback to improve. I think from my experience, there are a lot of different platforms, but I'm not sure if you have any that you either used or recommend.
I recommend Reedsy,
Mm-hmm.
Reedsy.com.
And that's REED as in David, SY.com.
Yes. And you can go into the Reedsy Marketplace, and they have, you can filter for book coaches. And they have very good book coaches on there. They also, if you're prepared to make an investment, have a wonderful, wonderful course, which is how the Chic Crone actually evolved, is I took a writing course with them called How to Write a Novel. And it's a 15-week course. It is intensive, but you do come out of it with the first draft of a novel. And again, you're doing it consistently every day in little baby steps. So you're not looking at this big goal. You're just doing it as you go along.
And
Not
one of
yourself.
the things you and I have talked about is in this process of reinvention, a lot of times we think we have to go solo. But I think one of the themes in your book and that we've talked about is the importance of having a community, whether it's a writing community or friends or whatever it might be, and of asking for help. Because writing can be a solo sport. Do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of community and even maybe how you highlighted it in the Chic Crone?
Okay. I have Hmm.
I threw a lot at you. Let's
Yeah,
start with,
yeah, there's
okay,
there's about
I'm
four
sorry, that's
questions
my
in
fault.
there.
Let's break it down. Let's
Okay.
first talk about what is it about our nature that makes us think we should go solo? Let's start there, and then I'll build on that.
Okay. In some respects, going solo is a good thing, when you're writing in particular. Um, a lot of really good book ideas have died because people have told somebody too early what their idea is. All it takes is somebody going, do you really think so? Or, oh, I read a book just like that last week. Or, fill in the blank. What I think community is really useful for is just general cheerleading, without getting specific. In Olivia's case, she had, in the main character in the book, she had been kept kind of isolated by her marriage and by what her husband wanted. Her only friend that she really trusted was her agent, her literary agent. She'd had some bad experiences at school, being bullied, and some trust issues. But it took having her world turned upside down and needing the help of others to figure out how to cope that showed her the true value of opening up to being friends with other people.
And building on a community that
Yeah,
she could trust.
yeah.
That,
Finding that there are actually such things.
right. And we've talked a little bit about, this concept of reinvention sometimes comes to us in one of two ways, right? Either life happens or we initiate. What are your thoughts and observations on the when life happens, as in the case of your main character, Olivia?
Yeah, a lot of big changes happen because they're forced on us, whether through divorce, illness, death, job loss, uh, moving to a new city. That forces a change. Uh, some people manage to choose it, but the more common push is an external push. I don't think I answered your question.
You did. And so when that life happens, when that external force comes in and creates that change, and we're forced in the middle of a transition, as your character Olivia was, what sometimes happens?
We resist hugely. Um, we want to go back to where it's safe. We want our life to return to status quo, and we start fighting with reality, which is always a losing proposition because reality will always win. So until we accept that it has to happen and we open our minds to it, as happened to Olivia when she got lost in the woods, and she finally had to accept that she can't go back, just forward. Um, that's the only way to get through it.
Oh no, we lost Kirsten. Let me center. Oh, there you go. We lost you for a minute. Um, you're on mute.
Bear with me 1 minute.
That's okay.
There
I
is
know technology. It's forced upon us. While you're doing that, I'm gonna look at the chat. Lisa, I really like your question, which is, when making a career life change, how can you shake the negative internal voice that keeps you from positive change? And I think that's a powerful question. And I also know from reading the Chic Crone that the main character, Olivia, has some negative self-talk going on. Would you agree, Kirsten?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
she has a lot of negative self-talk going on in the beginning.
And how did you either through the character talk about that or share some of your beliefs on how we overcome that?
A negative self-talk?
Mm.
Um, First, grounding ourselves in what's real and what we're making up in our minds. Uh, a lot of our negative self-talk simply isn't true. So I think for everything we're telling ourselves that's negative, we have to actually say, well, is this really true? Is it kind and is it helpful? Good old Byron Katie.
Yes. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it helpful?
Yeah,
And when you say is it true, is there evidence, right?
exactly.
Is there evidence?
Exactly. Is there real evidence or manufactured evidence? You know, that you're just, again, your brain will tell you anything it thinks you want to hear. So you have to fact check it occasionally.
Yeah, and another reference I would give on that topic is Tara Moore, Mohr is her last name. She talks a lot about the inner critic, and one of the things that she suggests is that you name your inner critic, right? And have that conversation.
Mine's named Delilah.
And what do you tell Delilah when she says you're not a good writer?
I tell her to go and do good works in Africa.
I love that. And what I would say is having that inner critic is normal, right?
Mhm.
And so not to create another layer of judgment on yourself for that, but it is a process also of, like you said, retraining your brain to accomplish things in opposition. So if that inner critic is saying you can't write, when you write a page, you've given proof to overcome that voice. And so are there things that you can physically do to help your brain overcome what that inner critic might be saying?
Yeah, and really the best thing is to just not scare your brain by trying to make too big a jump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the inner critic is there to keep us safe. It's there, it's hindbrain stuff. It's a survival instinct. The known, whatever it's like, is safe. I mean, it's at least predictable. Whereas trying to make a big change, well, you don't know what's waiting around the corner, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it is really just your brain trying to keep you safe. So you have to, again, say, is this fear real? Is there really a survival risk? Or is this just something new? So that helps too. But giving little bits of evidence consistently is the best way to not scare your brain.
Over time. And I will also add that one time someone asked me, whose voice is inside your head? And that was such an interesting question to me because I realized it wasn't just me doing some negative self-talk. There was a, old boss in the back of my head doing some negative self-talk from my long corporate career. And that was really enlightening. I did not want her to get to occupy that real estate. And that really helped me um, delineate between what's mine to own versus someone else's projections.
Yeah, it's amazing who we let live rent free. Um, it's often a family member. A lot of this stuff goes back to childhood. And yeah, again, stop, question it. Stop and question it.
Right.
Is this true?
Well, and I also think, one of the themes I'm going to shift a little is societal conditioning, because you highlight this also in your novel. And we talked briefly aside from here about big C, little c, in terms of the crone. So let's talk witches. Who doesn't love a good witch? Um, Talk to me about your idea for Crohn's and what some of that represents for you.
Well, there's Crohn's is such a judgment-laden word. I mean, historically, it comes from the triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, representing the three stages of womanhood. It has come to mean a woman past her use-by date, really dismissive, devaluing as women get older. The whole point of choosing Crohn's for my book was showing that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. It's never too late to become something. And you're always somebody of value. So little Crohn's is the pejorative, the dismissive one. Big Crohn's is actually a title in the book. It's for witches have a hierarchy in my world, and the crone is the top of the heap. But they only attain that when they've achieved a certain level of wisdom, intuition, have shown that they can make transitions and transformations, really become amazing, powerful women. So I just believe that we don't lose value. We have more value to give as we get older because we have more life experience, we have more perspective. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that.
That's really lovely reflection. Thank you for sharing. And I know midlife is a big point for transition for so many. Were there any, particular ahas for you in this stage of midlife and as you transition to author?
Well, as I said in the little video I did for Rebel 11, the big push for me came right after my mother died.
I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to pause. I'm going to just take over here and say that, the connection of adult daughter and mother is a really special one. And I know you had a really special relationship with your mother. And so thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with our audience that that was a transition.
Yeah, because at that point you have to decide, or I felt I had to decide if I'm going to live at this dream I have of becoming a published author. I couldn't do it while she was alive, but I'm damn well going to do it now.
Because there is something really powerful when that baton is passed, right? And we become the elder.
Well, we do. And suddenly, at least for me, I saw, oh, okay, maybe I only have 26 more years. What am I going to do with them? Am I going to keep living the same year over and over and over again? Or am I going to try and do something new?
And I so value the many conversations that are happening right now. I saw an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis where she was talking about how at age 60 she just decided, hey, if not now, when? And some of her most creative work, including opening her own production company, has happened since then. And I think there is this misnomer of, well, I'm too old to get started our past expiration date, right? And for me, holding on to mentors like Julia Child, who wasn't even on TV for the first time until she was 50, and think about the big body of work she created in her lifetime. And so I think there are examples after examples of that. And mentors are really important in the journey, and they were important to Olivia and the first Chic Crone here. Is there anything you might highlight as it relates to mentors, influence they've had for you?
Oh, I've had some amazing mentors. I had some great women bosses who taught me a lot. Um, yeah, and also I've had mentors that I've never met. People in the coaching community, like our mutual friend Tanya Lee,
Mhm.
who who teach a very powerful way of being and help to open your mind to new ideas. Tanya Lee, Fiona Ferris, um, Leah, there's been a number of women that have shown ways to open our minds to new ideas and new ways of being that have been very powerful and very useful.
Yes, we should mention that we met in the art school class hosted by
Yes.
Leah Campbell Battleshire, and she is certainly a mentor and a muse, and she's been on Revel 11 as well, and a big creative inspiration for us, and has a great podcast. You know, one of the things I loved about the book was it was very whimsical and magical. It was, dark in places, but also, exciting and fun. And I shared with you that I loved the imagery around food, and I was always wanting to eat when I was reading your book. It was so good. Tell me about food as an inspiration, and how you intend to sprinkle it for your readers and followers on your newsletter.
I love to eat. What can I say? I love food and I love good food. So Olivia does as well. I'm not saying Olivia is my alter ego. I'm just saying we both love food. And so do my other characters. Um, yeah, food description is so much fun to write. There are a number of things sprinkled throughout the book, a number of lemon lavender scones, a certain type of soup, saffron cake, whatever. So I've started including a self-created recipe for some of the items in the book for people on my newsletter. So they get a little bonus recipe or idea. And there's more in the next book. Just a
That's
heads up.
that's wonderful. I'm going to make sure I'm looking at some of the questions here. I think there was one on when you're trying to come up with an idea of a book and it's not from personal experience, is there anything you recommend in terms of having that idea generator?
What do you like to read? Start with what you read the most and say, oh, if I was going to write a book on dot, 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 um, who'd be a fun character? Where would be a fun setting? And take it from there. Just pants it, just see what comes up. That's probably the easiest way to start creating something, because you already have an idea of how that type of book, that genre works,
Mhm.
but make it your own.
Well, I think you raise an interesting point because I think when you're a writer, the best writers are also the best readers, and that reading a lot in the genre that you want to write in can be a good thing. You have to work to not let your mind say it's already all been written, because that's just not
Yes.
true. It's never been written in your voice, right?
Mm. Or with your characters.
On every corner, there's a dental office, and people still go to dental school. So, there is always room for more. We have a big wide world that we live in, and creative voices are celebrated. I also think that there are a lot of books with writing prompts, which can be helpful. And one
Mhm.
of the programs I've personally gained some experience and had fun with is AWA, which is Amherst Writers Association. And when you join an AWA class, there's someone certified to lead, and they do a prompt, and people write, and then give positive only feedback. There's a frame to do it in. And so that's a good way to also baby step and practice writing in a way that might help generate ideas if you're feeling like, oh gosh, I want to write, but I feel stuck. So that's a great question. Thank you. Please keep the questions coming. Another thing, it looks like Ruth and Cricket recommended Bloom on Becoming an Artist Later in Life by Janice Mason Steves. Thank you for the recommendations. Keep them coming. So, transitions, back to transitions and reinventions. Olivia is resistant to harnessing her powers, and I won't give it away, but why do you think so many of us women feel resistant to really stand in our power and recognize our power?
I'd say a lot of it isn't our fault. A lot of it is our conditioning, and we have to stop that. Sadly, the world seems to be going in the opposite direction, um, which is a very painful topic right now. It's very difficult for a lot of women in a lot of places to have any sort of voice at all now, let alone fully come into their power. Stepping into your power again, it's like writing a book. It's not, you're not long jumping. You're you're walking it. I mean, every little change you make, every time you grow, try something new, uh, open your mind to a new idea, you are becoming more powerful. You, so I, I actually wouldn't use the term stepping into your power. I would say growing into your power.
Mm, I like that because you're learning.
You're learning and you're a continuous learner and you are continuously open to new experiences and new ideas and not just knee jerk um, or sleepwalking through life.
Yeah, and sometimes when I feel stuck, the question I ask myself is where do I have agency today? Just today.
Mhm.
Where do I have agency? What's like one little thing I
Yeah.
can do today to help me feel like I have choices that help me expand or grow into that place I aspire.
Mhm. Well, we're really lucky because we have choices.
Mm,
Um, but even the most bound woman
mhm,
can still find even teeny tiny areas where she has a choice. And I think the object is to focus on that until you can start to widen the aperture
mhm.
and let more choice in. Um, yeah.
Well, I know that taking on this novel was out of your comfort zone. Tell me what you've learned on the other side of your comfort zone. Like, what are your learnings now that you have brought this dream and novel to life and character of Olivia?
Well, I know I can do it now. And that is huge. You
Hmm.
know, that's a huge growth into power. I also had to learn a lot of other stuff because my other three books have been traditionally published, and this one I've done myself, and that's a whole other cauldron of spells, let me tell you. So, um, I'm doing this. This is my launch period for this book, and hopefully it will get a little quieter soon because now I've started on the second book. I'm about 7 chapters in, but now I know I can finish it.
Mhm.
So, and that's huge. And then when I finish it, I'll take a deep breath and then decide what's next.
I love that. What advice might you give someone about self-publishing? I know that's a big question. You can just pick one thing if you want.
Um, there's a ton of information on the internet about self-publishing. And there's a steep learning curve if you're trying to do it all at once. My biggest advice, if you want to self-publish, is to start building an email list right at the beginning. Your website and your email list, even if it's just with a little newsletter talking about your writing and books. Because promoting it later, social media is great and it's useful, but you don't own social media. And the algorithms can do terrible things to you at any time. You own your email list. Start with that. So to do that, you have to you have to learn how to set up a little website, and you have to learn how to set up an integrated mailing list. That's enough for your first month. Let me tell you, that's enough for your first month. And then there's other stuff. Maybe someday I'll do a blog post with a checklist for people who want to self-publish. These are the steps you take.
Well, and I think again, like you said, it wasn't overnight. It was a process, but I think many authors are choosing to self-publish because it gives you a lot of opportunity of how you want your work to be presented to the world.
Absolutely. It gives you a whole lot more control over
Mhm.
the process, and the return is better, to be honest.
Mhm.
There are so many people with their hand out between the checkout at the store and the author's royalties that beggars belief, really. The other thing is when it's indie published, there usually aren't the returns risk there is with traditional publishing. When you're using a big distributor and they send out lashings of books everywhere, those books are all sold on consignment. Well, they're not sold, they're just sent out on consignment and they can come back at any time. So you can see big numbers in one royalty statement, and it's reversed in the next because of a whole bunch of returns.
Interesting.
Traditional
Well,
publishing is not for the faint of heart.
there's a lot to learn. What haven't I asked you that you would like to share? And please, audience, if you have questions, put it in the chat. Now's a great time.
I don't know. I think I'd rather hear about anything you might like to hear. I'm drawing a bit of a blank, Monica.
All right, I'll continue. I just want to make sure I'm giving others the chance to ask questions as well as you. So, one of the things that we've also talked about, Kirsten, is authenticity and how to get clear with one's own self, right? Which is a long process. And I know Olivia struggled with that too. And I think sometimes I know for me particular, if I'm not feeling authentic, it's easy to hold back, but I also know I need that practice in order to feel authentic. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. How do you think about authenticity and how it plays a role in our ability to move forward?
Are we talking about imposter syndrome?
Perhaps. That's a great way to put it too. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Again, it's providing yourself with the evidence that what you are saying is authentic is true. So again, it's just providing yourself with ongoing evidence and looking for evidence, because we often see the evidence of what's not true and use that to discourage ourselves, what we haven't done, what we haven't achieved, what we haven't become. But why not just focus on what you are achieving? Make it a work in process, not a definitive end goal, because there is no there. Because as soon as you reach a goal, you move the goalposts. We do it to ourselves all the time. We say, okay, I did that. We don't take time to celebrate. We just go, but I haven't done that yet. I haven't achieved that. And we send ourselves off down another track. That's my own little soapbox, sorry. We need to celebrate ourselves. We need to really revel in what we have done. And that's where our authentic and who we are, not who we need to be, who we are. That's where our authenticity lies.
That's really well said. Thank you. Well, it looks like we have a few questions on the writing process, so let's dive into that. One of the questions is a great question from Nolly. She asked, "Did you have a plan for all of your novels ahead of time, or do you build the next one after the first one is done?"
I have a basic idea for a 3-book arc for Olivia. So I knew, and I apologize in advance, there is a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of book 1. But that happens. If anybody's read The Discovery of Witches, massive cliffhanger at the end. Anyhow, because there is a 3-book arc in my head, which has made the second book much easier, because I know what has to be done to get to book 3. But I also know who my characters are, although one of them has run rogue already in book 2, but we'll work to fix that. So yes, in a loose sense, there is a plan, but things happen along the way as well.
Okay, speaking of characters, and things Ruth loves cliffhangers, did your characters speak to you in the writing process and guide you where they needed to go? How did intuition, what a great question, play a role in writing the novel? Great question, Dara.
A lot, actually. Everybody thinks that authors create a character and then move that character around like a chess piece on a board. I had a completely unknown character muscle into book 1, completely unplanned. And like I said, I've already had a character go rogue in book 2. So they will do their own thing. And I guess a lot of that comes from intuition, but they're kind of their own people, you know? All I can say is you do your best.
I love that. They're kind of their own people. That's awesome. Question from Kathy. Have you come across people trying to pull you back into your old life? An expectation of sorts that you are still the old you, or do you see more support for your new life as a writer?
Oh, that good old crab in the bucket, eh? To be honest, I'm past the point where I tolerate being pulled back. If I want to move forward, I have very good friends who celebrate that and grow with me. The people who want to pull me back belonged to a different time and place. I think you have to get maybe to a certain place in your thinking and your development before you can do that. But I'm at the point now where I haven't got time to waste defending who I want to be. I'm not interested in that. So come along for the ride. You are more than welcome. Otherwise, I wish you the very, very best.
Oh, Kathy wrote Crone with capital C. I love that. Thanks, Kathy. Someone else asked how to deal with tough criticisms.
You mean like bad reviews?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's call it a spade. Uh, Go on to Amazon, look up your favorite author, best-selling author. They will have one-star reviews. Nobody writes something for everybody.
Mm.
The sooner you understand that, the better. Your book is not you. Your book does not determine your self-worth. Don't let the reviews determine your self-worth. And, people can be pretty mean-spirited. And again, I think one-star reviews are very crab in the bucket. Um, you're familiar with that expression? Yeah. Uh, People feel very threatened by someone else doing something that they've always wanted to do, but never had the courage to try.
Mm.
So, there are authors who never read their reviews. Sometimes when you get a balanced review where there are observations where things could be improved or there were weaknesses, those can be really helpful. But just a mean-spirited review, that's on them, that's not on you.
Mm.
Move on.
Sometimes it tells you more about the reviewer than about your work. And I love when Brene Brown talks about being in the arena, right? Like,
Hmm. And you and I've talked about that too. It's easy to armchair quarterback,
mhm.
really easy. But if you so smart, you do it.
Okay, a question based on true events versus autobiography versus biography versus fiction. Is there a guide benefits for each category when writing? Oh, that's a big question.
Are you, ooh, I think I need a little clarification on the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Talking
you.
about what type of book, fiction or nonfiction to write? Or are you talking about using life experience to create a fictional book? They're two different
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, autobiography versus biography, we could just address in saying autobiography is when you, the author, are writing about yourself, and biography is when somebody is writing a life story about somebody else, right? That's how I would think about autobiography versus biography. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I would a lot of autobiographies now are called memoirs.
Right.
So uh that's that's similar, and that's supposedly nonfiction, although memoir can be, to some extent, fictionalized to protect the guilty.
Hmm.
In terms, and that's just a decision you make. If you're writing a biography about somebody, you have to do a lot of research and interviews, and uh, that's like doing a PhD. A memoir or autobiography it's just telling your life experience. Um, Unless you can be really clinical about it, and in which case it's not going to be a terrific read, uh, it's going to be painful to write. So be prepared for that. If it's going to be an honest memoir and not just, well, I guess there are some that have been pretty funny, like some of the travel memoirs and things have been not so personal. But using your own experiences to write fiction, I think is valid. They do say to write what you know. There is certainly prohibition these days about trying to write in a voice that is not your own, to take on an identity of somebody whose life experience you haven't personally experienced. I have mixed feelings about that. That's why we have imaginations, you know, empathy, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. But yeah, use life experience to write fiction. I,
And
I,
that,
I
yeah, that makes sense. And I think, no, you've addressed the question and that makes sense. It's most, most novels that are fiction aren't true stories, or they wouldn't be fiction, but they can be inspired or grabbed from events or experiences, because that's how you learn.
Mhm.
That's how you learn. And I think one of the tips that teachers have given emerging writers in classes I've taken is, when you're out somewhere, pay attention to dialogue, what you overhear, write it down. Like sometimes that's also what can inform a character, right?
Mhm.
And I agree, the power of imagination. And we'll close with this, because certainly, and our hour has gone quickly, but certainly you
Really?
used imagine. Yes, I know, we're there at the top of the hour. Certainly you used imagination with force when you created the world for Olivia, both her her mortal world, and then the world that she unexpectedly is forced into. And so tell me, for you, about what is the power of imagination, both as a creative and an individual.
Oh, I have a huge imagination. Um, I'm still waiting to become a fire crone. It doesn't seem to matter how hard I imagine it, it's not happening. But I think we should all use our imaginations more, and we shouldn't be afraid to. And we shouldn't be afraid to be who we are, because it's the best we can be, and there's nobody else like you.
That's a lovely way to tie a bow around this time. Thank you. And Andy, I appreciate your comment too. An author's personal truth and experience comes through even in pure fiction, and I agree with that. Stephen King has a good writing book out. I can't remember the name of it, but do Stephen King writing book and you'll find it. And he talks about, I mean, when you think about fiction, you think Stephen King, right? And so his writing process is really interesting. And that's the other thing I would say as an aspiring writer, read books on how other writers have become writers, right? There's a lot of great stories out there, but then create your own path. You're not anybody else. You get to grow in to your author skin, and into manifesting those dreams, whatever they might be.